Yeah, it's mindset cafe, we all got that mindset. Gotta stay focused, never settle for less. It's all in your head, how you think you manifest. So get ready to rise, cause we about to be the best. Gotta switch it up, gotta break the old habits. Get your mind right, turn your dreams into habits. No negative vibes, only positive thoughts.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast. It's your boy Devan, and today we got a special guest. We got my boy Ben Richardson on with us. Thank you, Ben, for taking the time out of your busy day. I know you're grinding right now too, so thank you for taking the time to hop on today.
Man, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Well, I wanted to bring you on because one, we're in a similar space of being dadpreneurs, right? We both have
Yeah.
young kids and wives and stuff like that, and launching and growing a business is definitely tough. But it's one of those things where you're learning to balance everything like that. And I know one of the things that we both struggle with is time management and trying to fit and cram everything in the day. So I wanted to get your perspective and allow those other aspiring entrepreneurs and just busy people to get your take on it, because I know you're excelling really well and growing your business. So obviously you got some knowledge, whether you think it or not, to drop on everyone.
For sure. For sure. Thank you. Yeah, it's I'm certainly learning as I go. My son just turned one 2 months ago, and so I've got a year under my belt. But it's certainly been a weekly mind shift to really make sure I'm prioritizing the things that I want the most. And spending time with my son is my son and my wife is really high up there. So yeah, it's been a lesson.
No, I completely agree, and I understand because my daughter turned 2 in January, so I'm not that much farther ahead than you. And believe me, it
Yeah.
doesn't get easier; it just gets different, right? So you
Right.
know, but so like let's start off. How did you get into the entrepreneurial space? I know you're in like the cannabis space and stuff like that, and we'll go
Yeah.
into what your business is and everything. But how did you get that entrepreneurial drive, or take that journey?
Man, I look back in my life and I see two things. Number one, I was blessed with two parents that turned entrepreneurial. They were both in the military for 25 plus years. But when I was right around high school, they started getting into property management and purchasing, and started buying duplexes, and just started really pushing in a direction I'd never seen them push before. And I started to see how much time they were spending on these properties, but then I also started to notice our lives changing. We started going on really cool vacations and started like having things. And I was like, oh, what's this? I've never seen our lives like this. And it just kind of showed me like, hey, you can have what you want, but the cost is this. And when I saw the cost, I mean, my parents used to spend, man, 40 plus hours a week at the apartments, and on top of being in the military. And so when I saw that, it kind of infused in me like, whatever you want, you can go get it, but like it's gonna cost you something. And so I actually started, I wouldn't even call it a business, but it when I look at it, it was a business. I started a snow shoveling business because we lived in Alaska. And
Yeah.
so I would go and shovel driveways. But the cool thing about shoveling snow in Alaska is that that's a 9 month thing. Like, you have customers that need their driveways shoveled every 2 weeks, like every week, sometimes every couple days. And after I went around my neighborhood, I would have people that would just say, "Don't even ask me, just come do it." They loved my work ethic, what I was, how much attention I paid to detail, how much I cared about making sure that their driveway looked good. And it really turned into this. I had clients, and so next thing you know, I started having money, and I was like, it was just kind of blew my mind a little bit, where I was like, "Mom and Dad, I don't want your allowance. Like, I'm gonna go get my own money." But it kind of started there, and then fast forward 20 years, I just kind of went through a bunch of different jobs, different jobs. learning about myself, learning things that I do like, don't like, just kind of going through that path of discovery. I think everybody goes through that. And then when I was 30, I hit this point where I could go back to working a job that I knew already, or I could take a step into sales. And it was cannabis sales. And I've never wanted to sell anything in my life. I've never thought about sales. I was always afraid of commissions. I just could not get myself to agree that that going after commissions versus having a strict or calculated dollar per hour. I couldn't make that transition in my mind. It was too scary to me. Bills and all that stuff kept me from stepping into sales because I needed to know that I was going to make X amount of money. And I just decided to get into sales. And that was when it really started for me because it was a 10% commission sales gig. So that meant there was no paycheck. And so it meant two things. Number one, it was all on me, that it like all of my work and everything that everything that would come from it would be based off my performance and how much time I dedicated or didn't dedicate. And number two, that the sky was the limit for how much I could make. And I didn't see that part at first, but then after like 6 months, it gradually, I started out like making or having 10,000 in sales, and then it was 15, and then 30, and then 50. And then when I hit 50,000 in sales, that's where my mind was like, oh damn, I just made $5,000 this month. Like, okay. And then it just went up from there, and then I just really realized that being in sales and working for commissions, it was the closest thing to being an entrepreneur that I had been, because I was in control of my money and there was no cap to my money. I could make an unlimited amount of money based on how many deals I could put together. And I started to figure out that it wasn't about how much time I was actually spending doing these deals. It's about how much networking I was doing. How many people was I connected to? How many people did I know? How many different businesses was I selling for? And that's when it expanded. And then I went to Costa Rica and made like 10 grand while on vacation. And then it really hit me. I was like, oh snap, I can just make money on my computer connecting dots. And that's when it really hit me that I was stepping into this entrepreneur space, and then I cared more about like my business and my money, and no one else was going to care about my money like I was going to. And just from me putting in that effort, I kind of realized like, all right, this is my thing. And then a couple of years later, I ended up stepping away from that company and starting my own company.
No, I mean, that's awesome. I think I want to rewind to something that you said, in the beginning with, the apartments and everything like that. You realized that there was a cost to the reward, right?
Yep.
And noticing that at a young age and knowing that even later in life, it's one of those things where people don't always associate that. They just see the reward and just want the reward, and then work a little bit and they're like, oh, I can't do it, or this isn't for me.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that depending on the reward or depending on what you're striving for, it's one of those things where there is a cost. There's a cost. It's cost benefit, right? You don't just get benefit, right? It's yin and yang, right? So realizing that, and then you going into sales and all of a sudden seeing your work transition into your commissions. And then all of a sudden, as your sales are growing, you're starting to realize, okay, well, yes, now you're in charge of your money, but also you are putting in more work, spending more time networking, and realizing the cost of higher commissions and higher sales is spending more time, hustling and, networking and doing those kind of things. So that's the important thing I think that people need to realize is there's a cost to everything in life. And what is that cost going to be? Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's huge.
Yeah. Sacrifice. And it's kind of one of those things, I would say that it can't be taught. You have to seek it. It has to be something that you are okay with and commit to. Our guys over there, you got to commit to that process, and like you said, everybody wants that reward. And I have 5 sales reps, and people look at me and like, oh man, you have so much. And I'm just, but I look back and I'm just like, but bro, you guys don't realize, for the first 3 or 4 years of being in the cannabis space, I visited like 40 or 50 dispensaries every single week for 3 or 4 years. So like, the way that I see it, my momentum ball is like, has been pushed and is just moving in such a direction that I almost just get wins, but I've failed a lot more, or I've put in so much work that my wins just come a little more often than other people. But it's like I earned those wins. I've put it like, you guys didn't see the times where, like everyone's off on a holiday and I'm like, I'm gonna work, or like when I'm on vacation and I wake up way earlier than anyone in the house so I can put in some more time. It's like, or working Saturdays and Sundays. Like there's just no time off. Like, and that's kind of the thing that people don't realize too, I think, in my space, is that like it's a 7 day a week thing. You gotta be putting it in. But if you do, then the rewards are X. And so I make sure that that no one thinks that this is easy, and that no
Yeah.
one thinks that this that just came to me or anything like that.
No, and I think that it's one of the biggest things on like social media, especially nowadays,
Oh
with
yeah.
all these like quote unquote coaches and entrepreneurial coaches and stuff. And it's like, their business is being a coach. Like they haven't built a company, a business, or anything like that.
Mm,
But
mm,
the entrepreneurial lifestyle isn't for everyone. And like that's okay. It's not meant for everyone. It's tough. It is stressful. And your job as a CEO or as a business owner or whatever your title is in your business as the owner, it's putting out fires, right? Solving problems is your job, right? So it's one of those things. Yes, you're building and yes, you're growing, but once you start to get a team and you're delegating to your team, like we were just talking before, for this episode, you had to get a van and stuff for one of your guys to make a transport. It's like that would have been you back in the day, right? But now you have a team and stuff like that. So now you had to solve that problem of getting, and it's a little problem, but again, solve that problem of make sure that guy has the truck, right? So not everyone is meant to deal with that kind of stress. And again, there's no negative side to not being an entrepreneur, right? Some
yeah.
people are meant to be entrepreneurs. So
Mm,
one of the things like you had just mentioned is people get into the entrepreneurial space, like I'm sure you did, just like I'm sure I had this thought when I was doing it too. You think that you're gonna basically quote unquote buy back your time, right? In the beginning, right? And your time doesn't get bought back until later on necessarily. In the beginning, it is 24/7. Like you are leaving a
mhm.
9 to 5 to work 24/7. And as your business grows, you start to build out a team, and then you can hang out with your son. Then I can hang out with my daughter, right? But in the beginning, like even when I had my personal training business, right, I worked 12 to 16-hour days of clients back to back to back to back, and I was making really good money. But at the same time, like I was the business, like your
Yeah.
snow shoveling business, like you were the business, right? So it's one of those things where there's that misconception that, just because you're an entrepreneur, it's easy and it's stress free and everyone just works for you. It's like, no, now you're dependent on everyone's income, right? Because if
Yeah.
you're not solving problems, you're essentially affecting the income and growth of potential income for customers. So how do you deal with that kind of stress?
Oh man, pray. No, you know what? It really is sometimes I don't know how I deal with it. Like yesterday was one of those days actually, and I love that you talked about like it's the putting out fires and the solving the problems. Yes, yesterday was one of the more hectic and stressful days I've had in a long time, and we had a deal on the table that we almost lost. We almost had somebody that was going to basically allow us to sell their product and move their brand. They almost went to someone else, unfortunately, due to some communication issues, and I stepped in, saved the deal, made sure that they felt that like our customer service and what we could provide them was tailored to who they were, and that we weren't trying to tell them how it was going to be. And so, yesterday, honestly, it I had to just keep reassuring myself that even if the deal fell off the table, it was going to be okay. And then I also made sure that I was like, I didn't let it consume me. And actually, my guy that unfortunately complicated the deal, he was getting eaten up all day. And instead of coming down on him and being any kind of way to him, I just kind of reassured him, like, hey man, this is a learning lesson. Like, two things. Number one, if this communication snafu pulls the deal off the table, then maybe that was somebody that we didn't really want to be in business with long term, because like there's gonna be issues. And if we can't have, come back to the table, address each other like entrepreneurs, like adults, and get over it, then maybe this isn't it. So, yesterday was kind of a eye opener for me, even to be able to take a step back. And even though it was worrying me, because my guys already started sampling this product, we've already pulled it in our system, like we've already kind of gone down the road. We actually got some sales already. It was worrying me, but like I had to take a step back and I'm like, no matter what, it's going to be okay. Like it has to be, even if it doesn't work out, then we'll learn from these lessons. We'll learn what we need to learn and we'll keep marching forward. And so I think it's, kind of like the mindset cafe. It really is putting your perspective in the right place and just being aware of the problem and not becoming the problem. And I think that's a gradual growth thing, because if you would have, I can see myself 3 or 4 years ago with some big deals that I just like let it stress me all the way out. Probably go get a beer in the middle of the day. I'm like, oh my God, I can't handle it. But yesterday was really, like I said, eye opening to see my counterpart, my COO, he was squirming a little bit, because I know he felt bad and truly was his fault. But I was like, hey man, like it is what it is. Like this is what we're gonna learn from it, and we'll do our best to let them know that like, hey, our customer service is different. We're here for you, and this is what we got for you. And by the end of the day, it all worked out. But it was kind of hairy during the day. So I think just kind of keeping the right mindset and looking at the problem, and again, not becoming the problem or
No,
not letting it consume you.
no, definitely. And I think what a couple key points in your example right there, that's huge. Whether you realize it or not, because you could, as a business owner, like you can just, basically put the blame on your CEO, COO, and, basically say it was his fault. Like, why'd you do that? Blah, blah, blah. But taking it and explaining to him, like, look, like it was a learning lesson. Like you didn't do anything wrong out of like ill will. And like this could have happened to anyone in this, predicament. Like now you won't let this happen again. Like this is a learning lesson, right? A lot of times as business owners, especially, like you get upset that one of your team members is not performing the way you would perform, or do a situation the way you would do it. And then, they fire them, and it's like, now you got to train another person to get exactly just to where that person was. And that person might make that same mistake, right? So it's like,
Right.
just take that, even if you do lose a little bit of money on the deal, like if it was a genuine accident, like you got to, as the business owner, take the blame. Like, look, that's my fault for not explaining it, or teaching you, or blah blah blah, how to do this. And obviously they're going to take the blame in some themselves, but it's one of those things where you got to take the blame as the business owner for everything that goes wrong in the business, right?
Yeah.
That's on your head too. Anything that goes wrong, it's you, right? You are the top, problem solver. But it's one of those things also that I think that's huge, is you realize that not every deal has to work, right? Not every, whether the money's right or not, sometimes if someone's, especially another business or a partnership, is just lining up and just the relationship or dynamics is weird, or their actions aren't aligning with your normal actions or core values, like sometimes it's just better not to make that partnership. I mean, even for our franchise, I've already, like, believe me, we're in the beginning stages. You would think I would be bringing everyone and anyone on. Like I've already told people, like on the second call, like, hey, I just don't think this is a good fit for you. you know?
Yeah.
And just because like I don't want to be tied to them for, 10 years, and just like
Right.
you don't want to be tied to them for whatever your guys' partnership agreement is, right? And I think that's a lesson you learn as a business owner over time, right? Because in the beginning, you're just hungry to get connections and sales, right?
Oh yeah. 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 No, it's truly that, we've been doing this for 4 years now, and we've had quite a few massive deals come through the plate, and I honestly, I truly saw that yesterday. A little bit of growth in myself, where I was just like, because hindsight's 2020, right? Like we can always want this deal. You can always want what's in front of you, but like you don't know what the future looks like, and so it's good to like, hey, if this is what causes the deal to derail, then maybe it was supposed to, and it certainly takes a level of humility and wisdom to kind of have that perspective. So it was nice to be able to not be as stressed out as I have been in the past if a deal's on the line. And I was like, well, we got more shit we got to do today, so let's keep doing business, and we'll keep this in our back pocket, and if they reach out, they reach out, and if not, then we'll go from there. But hey, what I told them, all is well that ends well. At the end of the day, we were back on track. I was like, cool, well, we learned some lessons. My guy is highly analytical. And I even told him this, and he even was like, man, I gotta, I'm very logos and I need to work on my pathos. And I was like, absolutely. And guess what? I'm very pathos and need to work on my logos. I'm super great at connecting with people. And I can work on some of my not debating, but just some of the working the deal things. I can work on those, but we even said like, man, maybe we should just tackle deals together, because people definitely will just love to work with me, and he can kind of bring the analytics, and then I don't know, we've just kind of seen that maybe we should like tackle deals together, and I think we're getting even further.
No, I mean, I think that'd be a huge step too, because I mean, it's a business meaning at the end of the day, when you're making partnerships and when the deal comes down the pipeline, and it's one of those things where you guys feed into each other and can basically play both sides and act as one, especially as you guys start to do it more and more, and then you'll just become an unstoppable force at that point. So I mean, I think that's huge. But one thing you're also mentioning is like the way you reacted to the situation, the way you were talking to him, is your emotional intelligence has also grown, right? You're not reacting to things, and basically having just a reactive mindset. You're looking at things and being like, okay, hold on, let's take a step back. Like maybe it's not this, like, and then you're like, well, we still got other stuff to do today. So you're being proactive on, a lot of your things instead of being reactive, because as a business owner, being reactive, or just a human, if you're reactive to everything, your life is just even more stressful, right?
Yeah. It's and honestly, it's obviously easier said than done. And it's kind of interesting that I have found to be easier to be less reactive in business than in my personal life. And so it's trying to make sure that I take the skills and things that I'm learning in business and put it in my personal side too. But sometimes I feel like when I leave the business and go to the personal side, I just kind of let everything drop. I just let, and just because it feels like relieving, if you will. And so sometimes I kind of allow other things to get to me on the other side, where I'm just like, man, like, why am I able to handle things so much better at the business versus sometimes in my personal life? And don't wrong, I think it is because I have employees and stuff, and I know that I'm always not on a pedestal, but like people are watching, and when I'm at home, yes, my son is watching and my wife is there, but certainly I think the comforts just allow me to be a little more lackadaisy, and I'd like to tighten that up a bit too.
So no, let's go into that though. I mean, that's a huge like aspect of, even just professional, like people that have careers, entrepreneurs. How does your wife still work with you in the business, or is she kind of transitioned out a little bit?
She's transitioned out a little bit. She stays home with our son Mondays and Tuesdays, and then works from home Wednesdays and Thursdays, and then comes in the office Fridays. And
Okay.
so she's still in the business, but it's been so nice. Last year we brought on a COO, we brought on another C-suite executive, and it really relieved a lot from her plate and allowed her to be more of a mother, which that was eating at her soul, that she wasn't able to spend the time with our son that she really wanted to. The one thing that we both keep hearing, and I'm sure you've heard a ton of it, is that this time will go fast. That like them being small, it will, you'll blink and they'll be a teenager. And I mean, seeing how fast the first year went, I can see what they're saying. It blows my mind that he's already walking. He's like talking pretty much, and I'm just like, how did you get here? I remember when you fit in one of my arms, and now like you're a whole hand, two hands full. And so it's just been I'm super happy. And again, I even just see as I'm sacrificing right now. Like, don't get me wrong, I do want to be at home and I love these years, but I also know that like I'm excited for when we go play basketball together, when we go, play soccer, or when we're going for a run or doing BMX or whatever it is. And so I just see as myself right now sacrificing the time that I would want to maybe spend at home, for the future. Kind of like we talked about in the beginning of this, is like buying the time, right? I feel like I am putting in the work now to buy the time then, so that like when he has the sports games, I can be there. I can like, I'm off, and so but you've got to put that time in now. And so I'm just glad to be that we can give that to my wife. But we're only able to do that because we have two C-suite executives that have been able to really relieve her from a lot of the other duties and hats she was having to wear.
No, I mean that is huge. That's a huge accomplishment. Congratulations on
Yeah.
that. But I mean, also going into that, like buying back your time, like you said, it's one of those things where you're also you both are building a business that, just like you got the experience growing up and seeing that entrepreneurial growth, and you can basically achieve anything you want as long as you're willing to basically spend the cost, right? And so even though your son is one, like, I mean, my daughter's two, and believe me, I'm in the same boat as you. And for some reason, like, I don't want to scare you, but the second year
Yeah.
goes faster than the first year. Uh, I don't know if it was just because of the business or what, but like all of a
Right.
sudden I was like, wow, that one went fast. But it's
Yeah.
one of those things where also you're setting down a foundation, and by the time he is 5, 6, 10 years old, all of a sudden he sees the business that you've built, the company that you've built, and being able to explain how and show him where you started, like showing him pictures from back in the day and all those kind of
Yeah.
things, and allowing him to see the business continue to grow. And it's like, oh man, like you're instilling lessons that not everyone gets. Not every kid
Yeah.
gets that experience of firsthand experience of like, you can be anything you want to be as long as you're willing to put in the work, right?
Right. Right.
So I think that's really huge, and it's one of those things where there is a cost and you are buying back your time, but also realize there's lessons that your son doesn't understand yet, but he will be privileged enough to
Yeah.
receive those lessons that most people, haven't been able to receive. With my next question to you is, since you both are working in the business, I guess it's a
Mhm.
two-part question. Since you
Yeah.
guys are both working in the business, right? One, how is your guys' relationship, or how have you guys managed to keep a strong relationship? Because I know a lot of couples that work together, they say basically strains their marriage and stuff like that. I don't know firsthand, but I know that's a topic, as well as how do you guys take off the mask, like you were saying, from work, and put on both of your guys' personal masks, or your home life masks, especially with you guys both being in the business and seeing different stresses in the business.
Um, you know, and again, I think it goes back to everything is practice, right? Everything is where we are now is not where we started. How well we are running our relationship and business together now is not how we started. You know, it was certainly rocky at first, because I had been in the industry for 3 or 4 years and she had not. And so I had a lot of pride and a lot and foolish pride, honestly, more than anything, foolish pride about what I had achieved and what I brought to the business. Um, and so in the beginning, I think that we butted heads more because I felt some kind of way and needed to really see her value and what she brought to the business. And even though I knew it, I've always, before we even got to this night, I told her, I was like, hey, look, I'm really good at sales. I'm good at flying fast. I'm good at making deals. What I'm not good at is paperwork and keeping things tight and sticking to the rules. I'm a rule bender, maybe a breaker. And so like I need someone to kind of keep me in line sometimes, so that this business can actually go somewhere and be a business. And so in the beginning, I think it was kind of stressful, but like you have to get into it to start to learn how to make it better. You can have these ideas of like, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to do this, but until you start to see the daily schedule, till you start to see what is really required, you're not going to be able to create the framework for like, okay, hey, like let's stop talking about business after 9, like no business talk after 9, or like, hey, dedicated family time, dedicated date time, on these days. Like right now, for every single Friday, 6:15, we go to salsa. We've been doing that for like 2 months now. It's one of my favorite things. We both look forward to it, because it's one of those things when we're in salsa, there's no business talk. We're both the most uncomfortable we've probably been in some time because we both don't know salsa. So we're just laughing at how goofy we look and how just we don't know anything. And it's nice because you can feel that separation, but you got to put you have to put that there, and so just figuring it out as you go, and communication is absolutely key. And setting some guidelines. Again, you got to build it as you go. We both just jumped into it. We just had our son, so for the first 3 years of the business, it was just me and her. And I think that was kind of crucial for us, to be honest with you, because there was just a lot of unknowns, and the amount of time that was required to be here, it would have been really hard with our son then. It was 40 and 60 hours a week each, coming to work at 7. I get off at 2 a.m. sometimes. I can't do that with my son, and so I think it's all worked out perfectly, but it certainly was stressful. But you can get away from the stressful if you look at why it's stressful. It's like, what's stressing us out about this? What is it about our work and personal relationship mixing together? What's the friction there, and how do we create or have less friction there? And I agree. And again, I think it just kind of came to us looking at, all right, hey, like, I want to shut my brain. You both want to shut your brain off. And so like have those times. And it is so hard because when you're working in the business and you go home, the business follows you. People don't realize that is like, there's no leaving it here. And that's why even I tell my employees, like when you clock out, your brain gets to clock out. I don't ever get to clock out. There's no clocking out. I go home and then there's like, oh man, we got to think about this. And like, the future, and like, oh man, in 6 months we should probably put that down. And so because that can happen, you really do got to set guidelines of like, hey, after 7 p.m. it's family. We're not talking about business. It's gonna be there so we can pick it up in the morning, but like let's make sure that you're making time for each other and for our lives, because it will consume you if you allow it to. And so you really got to keep your business in its place. You really got to check your business and make sure that it's like, hey, like you're running the business isn't running you. And it's easy to get run by the business. It's super easy because all of these things are important. But again, mindset. And it's like, hey, it is important and I'm giving it my time, but like I need time for me too. And so it'll make you more efficient at the business because it's like, hey, I've got this limited time, so I need to get all of these things done. So it just kind of makes you approach the business differently. But I think really starting to build parameters to when the business talk is allowed to happen, when is mandatory, us time. Even me, I bowl. I've been a bowler for 20 years. I bowl league, and so even having personal time. My wife recently started playing the guitar. I'm so happy because I'm like, yes, feed your soul so that you're happy also, because it can't just be about the business or just about the baby or just about me. Like, you got to make sure that you're doing things for you too. And so it's I don't think that you'll be able to know how to approach your work life relationship with your significant other until you're doing it. But then you gotta, like I said, look at what the frictions are and start to see how you can have less friction.
No, I think that's awesome. That's amazing. You guys have, grown together, and not grown apart. Because that, again, you hear so many horror stories, but again, you hear so many horror stories about partnerships in general. And like, you guys are a successful partnership. Like me and my business partner, like we are, yin and yang. Like I'm like you, like my brain goes
Yeah.
nonstop, and I mean, I just came up with an idea last night while I was working out at midnight because that was the first time I got a chance to work out. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden I was like, all right, we're not going to start thinking about this, take a note. We're going to think about it tomorrow. But
Yeah.
I was like, all of a sudden I started getting all excited during my workout. And that's when my brain technically is supposed to be shut off. So I completely get it. But I mean, that's amazing, because if you can make a partnership work as well as your partnership being your, your significant other, I think you have an unstoppable force in that nature, right? Because you guys are
Oh,
always
for
gonna
sure.
have each other's backs and stuff like that. But that's awesome. And one of the key things too in what you were saying is self-reflection, right? What is the stress? Why am I stressed? What, was the pain point, or what is lacking, and, really evaluating what that is, right? A lot of people
Yeah.
don't really go through that. And I mean, I try to tell people, like, you should be trying to reflect on your day. Like, there's a lesson learned every single day, whether you think there was or not,
Mhm.
in a conversation, in, something happening, there was a lesson to be learned. And if you can extract that lesson every single day, then you're going to be better at the end of the year, right? But
Yeah.
you also mentioned, like, it's learning the lesson, taking action, but also making sure that the communication is there. Just because you learn the lesson doesn't mean the other person learned the lesson. So you got to make sure that communication is there, so you guys keep that open line.
Yeah. Yeah. It and it just don't happen, But and I think one of the biggest things is also making your relationship a priority. Like I said, like, I love the business, but like, honestly, more than anything, my wife and my son come first.
Mhm.
And I've had to, again, it was kind of a paradigm shift, because the first 3 years I think I was putting the business first, because I was like, well, without the business we don't have anything. But it's like, in all reality, like, we could make our way out of nothing. Like, the business could go and we will figure it out, especially together. And so it's like, well, if we're strong, the business will be strong, And so it really was, again, putting the business in its place and being like, the business is almost a third person in your relationship, if you will. It's like, 'cause it needs time, attention, and focus and stuff, but it can't run everything, And so when I started making Amanda a priority, um, honestly, I think the business got better. Like, it really, and we bump heads every now and then. It's easy for one to get frustrated, but again, it's how you handle things. And it's actually been easy to take a step back and like, hey, man, I'm sorry I reacted that way, or I'm sorry that you know that that I didn't see it from your perspective. Just being humble, and I don't know. I'm always just excited to get back to how we normally are. And that's kind of my thing too. It's like, I hate when I'm like, when we don't feel like us. And I think if you can, like, be chasing that feeling of like, I just want to feel how we felt before the business. I want to always, I always want to be dating you. And my wife, and don't get me wrong, my wife puts a very huge emphasis on it and keeps my head there, but it also keeps me excited. So I'm super thankful. And I also think it comes down to like having the right person too. Because like you said, not everybody could or should be an entrepreneur. But her parents were entrepreneurs too. Her parents ran a construction business. So it was, again, that was something I knew about her prior to. It's like, oh, okay, she's got the experience. She knows that, like, the staying late, the kids want to go home. Mom and dad's like, no, work's not done. And so she had that experience too. So I knew that like this wouldn't be too overwhelming for her. And it was just nice to have. I'm just say blessed. I was blessed to have found somebody that I could go on this journey with, because I would be very scared, or I wouldn't know what my relationship would be like if she didn't have the understanding of the entrepreneur background and what it takes. Because a lot of people are like, oh, you work too much, or why are you doing this? And it's like, it's required, man. Like, you say you want this life, but like you don't want to see or allow me to put in the work for us to get that life. So like, I don't think you really want that. And then they hold it against you, and then it's just tumultuous. And I couldn't be with anybody that's trying to clip my wings. That's a big thing for me. Like, I'm a fire. And like, actually, I have this metaphor that I use. Me and her were an eagle, and I'm the wings, and the talons, and she's the eyes and the brain. And if she let me, I'll fly us into the sun. And so, but I'm glad that she, lets me fly high, but keeps us safe and keeps us, keeps me grounded. And I really do see us as that metaphor. And but yeah, it's a great partnership we have.
No, that's amazing. I like that analogy. Before I ask you, the my favorite question,
Yeah.
let everyone know we kind of just dove right in. I know we know you're in the cannabis space, right? But what side of the cannabis space are you in? Just so the listeners know, and so when they,
Yeah.
if anyone can connect with you.
So we own a retail store. We own a dispensary, but the thing that we do, I mean, the retail store is probably, I say it's 10%. It might be 5% of the business. What we do is wholesale. So we make 4 or 5 different products. So we have a production facility. So we make some products. We don't have a farm. So I source a lot of material, biomass, as we call it, from different farms. And we make 4 or 5 different products. But then we also wholesale for a couple other brands as well. So we've got a licensing agreement going with an edible brand. So we produce, manufacture, and distribute their brand here. And then and we actually just started doing that for another brand yesterday. And so distribution and production is our main source of revenue for our company in Oregon is called Lifted Northwest. We actually just launched in Colorado 2 months ago, or maybe a month and a half ago. And our national brand is actually going to be called Liddy's. We just saw from a trademarking perspective that Liddy's is something that we can use nationally. But in Oregon, we bought the dispensary. It was called Lifted Northwest already. And so we just ran with that brand on our packaging for Oregon. But again, as we've kind of looked in a national scheme, Liddy's is our national brand. But wholesale and distribution is our main business here in Oregon.
No, that's awesome. And so you guys are able to do it on a national scale. So a lot of the stuff you guys do is like, regulated on like a national level.
Man, you know what? Yes, and it's super interesting because it is federally illegal. No cannabis can be sent over state lines. So our business that we're running in Colorado is all just from Colorado. So what we have figured out is, instead of having to purchase licenses and get a facility, we're just running licensing deals. So we basically went to Colorado, found a company that's willing to use our SOPs, make our packs a certain way, use our packaging and our brand, license them that, and then we have a sales team there too. So all of our product is made for Colorado, is made and sold within Colorado. None of it comes from Oregon. And our next deal, I think we're going after Missouri, and in Missouri we'll do the same thing. We'll go and find a manufacturer, sales team, and get them our SOPs, get them our product line, packaging and such, and then launch there. And then looking down the road, when it goes federally legal and we can send stuff from Oregon, that's going to be a whole new thing, because then I believe we should not scale back, but we should bring everything back to Oregon and be sending out Oregon cannabis to the rest of the United States. And so, because Oregon cannabis is branded, everyone knows about Oregon cannabis. It is certainly high up there. I like to say it's like up there with like Cali bud or a BC bud from Canada. It's really known. And so I think we should lean into that Oregon branded cannabis in the future. And so we'll probably bring all manufacturing back to Oregon and have this be the main hub for distribution and yes, national sales.
I mean, that's awesome. I mean, another way to look at it too is, you keep that branded stuff in Oregon, but since you're already building out licensing deals and like establishing a foundation in other areas, like you create different products for that one area, different, and then they're still all national. But
Yeah.
if someone orders something, let's say the premium stuff, or and then like mid grade or whatever, like
Sure.
California, whatever, then it's like
Yeah.
that facility creates it and then ships that package out. And then, when you receive packages, sometimes it's like shipment one of two, right? And then, so the
Right.
facility is sending them out different ways, but that way you can mass produce. I mean, again, there's so many different options, and I'm excited to see when that does happen, like what you do end
Yeah.
up deciding to go and where you're at. Cause I mean, with your growth already, you might already outgrow just your thought of just staying in Oregon, right? You might
Oh,
you
yeah.
know,
Well, I mean, so it like cannabis is a very unique thing. Number one, it is a commodity. It will and is as cheap as corn and potatoes. It's gonna have to be viewed as the farming will have to be viewed as like grand scale. So it won't necessarily be something that's as profitable being grown inside buildings. Like cannabis is going to be an outdoor, like tobacco fields. It will be there because it just the cogs and the cost to produce and with the price friction that you're going to get in every market, it's just not gonna be the price for it is just not gonna match what it's gonna cost to produce, the cost that the consumer is gonna pick it up at. And so knowing that, like, having that vision already, I'm here in Oregon just kind of thinking like, man, like how do we get our hands on some land? Like everybody sure wants indoor weed, but like we're already seeing it. There is price compression in Oregon where there are so many indoor farms going out of business because it just does not make sense to produce it indoors at the price that you have to sell it to dispensaries. It just isn't making sense. And I think it's just going to get worse, honestly. And on top of that, California, Nevada, Arizona, they're going to have water issues here shortly. And when they have those kind of water climate issues, first things that are going to go are things like golf courses and cannabis. When you have to give people water, you can't be, and there's a water crisis. Yeah, you're not going to be spending all this water on cannabis and ancillary things. So it's like, I don't know. I'm seeing all of these conditions and I'm just trying to gauge where the market's going to be and how we can approach it best. And again, seeing that Oregon weed is just kind of branded already. People want to try it, no matter where you are, whether you're in Texas, New York, Florida, like, oh, I want to smoke something from Oregon. I think it just kind of will behoove us to I don't know. I don't know, but it behooves me to try and see though, and that's kind of where I'm at these days. Is like, what does the future look like? How do we prepare ourselves? I don't know if you know this, but they're rescheduling cannabis, so it's going from Schedule One drug, which is up there with heroin and LSD, I believe, and it's going to Schedule Three, and Schedule Three means that it does have medicinal properties and the FDA is going to get involved. So a lot of us in cannabis are also scared about that too, because we believe that they've just changed the regulations so that the FDA can get involved. And we don't know yet what that means for us. And so it's kind of, everyone's like, oh, rescheduling. But anybody who's an owner in this industry is like, nah.
Yeah.
We get that, like, yeah, it's rescheduled, but like, what does that mean?
Right.
And that's kind of where we're at, is that we haven't seen what their plans are and how they're going to shape things. And so trying to meter the excitement. I mean, we do get banking. Banking should be a thing since it's not a Schedule 1 drug. So that's going to be huge for us. I mean, we've got banking right now, but we have to use like online banking or, fintechs, if you will. And so it's just been, it's been tough doing
Right.
banking. And so, we'll see. But I don't know, future's exciting nonetheless.
No, that's awesome. So my favorite question to ask is, let's say
Yeah.
hypothetically, right? Everything is erased that, you've accomplished, and, you get one lesson that you've learned, or one quote that basically, or piece of advice that someone has given you as your legacy piece, right? On your tombstone, let's say there is one lesson or one, piece of advice to leave the world. What would that advice be?
Mm. You know what? I wrote a quote. My quote, came up with it myself, and it would be, if it scares you, then you already know, and if it doesn't, then it's time to go. And that's my quote for growth. That is how I don't sit still too long. That's how I know when I think about doing something. If it scares me, if I'm like, oh, I don't know, do it. It's like this business. It was $900,000. We only had 100,000, and they said that we could put that 100,000 down, and we had 12 months to pay it off. I didn't know how we were going to do it. I was scared, and we weren't going to get our 100K back. And honestly, at that point in time, I never really even had 100K. So to put that 100K down and accept this 12-month time frame of being able to purchase the business, but having to come up with $800,000. That was kind of one of my turning points, and actually even sales, actually getting into sales. I didn't know, but I was like, you know what, I'm just going to try. And I just remember feeling a little bit of fear in my chest, like, oh gosh, I'm scared, but it's not scared, it's excitement. And so I feel like, lean into it. So I always think that, that fear feeling is an indicator to move forward, not to step back. And so that's why I say, if it scares you, then you already know. And if it doesn't, it's time to go. So sometimes I think in life, you'll find things that you've been doing for a while. And it's this is, I've gotten used to this. All right, cool. What's the next? Then how do we step it forward and find the next thing that scares us? And so that's what I would have on my tombstone.
No, that's awesome. Where can people connect with you?
Man, I mean, on my socials, it's Benergy, BE_NRGY, and then I should probably be a little more accessible, to be honest. So that's one of the ways. I've written a book. Actually, it's called Green Gold, where I have compiled everything that I've learned about sales and cannabis and how someone could use that in any state and be successful. I'm working on the second version right now, and I'll start doing a book tour probably later this year. And so, but man, shoot. Look up Lifted Northwest, call the phone, and tell them to get bid. I'll come pick it up.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. And guys, make sure that you guys share the show, leave a review, and like always, we appreciate you guys. We love y'all. Ben, thank you so much for taking the time.
Hey, Devin, it was a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much for having me. And it was great talking to you.
Are you going to North Carolina?
What's up?
Are you going into North Carolina?
I mean, I don't know where their legal status is.
No. In 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks? Oh, no. Oh, is that for the RBO? Oh man, no. It is not on the docket. Unfortunately, there's a lot in the play right now between Colorado and launching this product here is just, I'm feeling kind of drowning a little bit, but just juggling it all.
No, we'll definitely have to, connect again soon then.
Absolutely, my friend.
No negative vibes, only positive thoughts. Cause in the game of life, mindset calls the shots. Got my mind on the prize, I can't be distracted. I stay on my grind, no time to